Berserker Barbarians. Everybody says they're not that great, and a lot of people have issues with them, so this is my chance to take a stab at fixing it. If you want to see how I'm going to fix the 5e Berserker Barbarian, stay tuned. Alright folks, so we're going to jump over to D&D Beyond, and we're going to look at the path of the Berserker, talk about it, and see what we can do to fix it. The main issue that a lot of people have with it is right here. This is Frenzy, your 3rd level ability. And I'm going to talk about some of the other Barbarian subclasses out there as well to kind of give you an idea as to why. So at 3rd level, you can go into a Frenzy when you rage. If you do so for the duration your rage, you can make a single melee weapon attack as a bonus action on each of your turns after this one. When your rage ends, you suffer 1 level of exhaustion. So there's a couple of issues with this. One, this is, in theory, your main ability, your main thing that you get at level 3 that makes you different from most other barbarians. We can talk a little bit about Mindless Rage in a little bit, but this is kind of your main thing. You are a frenzy, you can go into a frenzied rage. But what does that do for you? Well, you can make a single melee weapon attack as a bonus action. It limits you to a melee weapon attack, whereas in theory, you could use your attack action to throw a weapon, to do a ranged weapon attack. Not saying that you will, but you could, right? And then you can make it as a bonus action. That's the other part. It's as a bonus action. So you have to utilize your bonus action to use this ability. So you can't use it on the first turn when you activate Rage, because the first turn you have to use your bonus action to Rage. So you can't even use this ability when you use your first Rage. You have to wait till the next turn to activate it. And the other major downside is when you use it, when your rage ends, you suffer 1 level of exhaustion. So let's go ahead and pull up Exhaustion real quick. So what does 1 level of exhaustion do? This is going to give you disadvantage on all ability checks. That means most things you're going to deal with in an exploration or a roleplay scenario. I will remind you that initiative is an ability check, so you have disadvantage on initiative. Eventually, that's canceled out by the fact that you get advantage on initiative, but you get my point. And then at number 2 is where it really starts to become a problem. Your speed gets cut in half at 2 levels of exhaustion. You're a barbarian, you get fast movement that's going to let you move a little bit further, but especially given the fact that Frenzied Rage focuses on a melee attack, and Reckless Attack focuses on a melee attack, you're going to want to be close to your enemy so you can hit them and do your thing as a barbarian. But if your speed is halved, and you don't typically have a way to get dash as a bonus action, or extra movement, so you may have to use your action to dash, and then in doing so, you have less options to get close to people because your movement speed is half. And then once you hit 3rd level and beyond, then it kind of becomes really just not a good thing for you at all. At 3rd level, it's disadvantage on attack rolls and saving throws. With attack rolls, you can at least try to offset that a little bit with Reckless Attack and get yourself a straight roll. Granted, your enemies are still going to have advantage on attack rolls against you, and you're still going to have disadvantage on saving throws. And really, beyond there, it's not really worth doing. So, what's the issue with all of that? Well, one, like I said, you're going to have to use your bonus action. You have to wait for your 2nd turn in Rage to be able to do it, assuming you are still in Rage on the 2nd turn. Probably because you're more than likely going to make an attack or be attacked, but if not, then you have to use another Rage, and then wait another turn to use your Frenzy. One good thing about it is you can make this melee attack as a bonus action regardless of what you do with your action. So if you do, say, use your action to dash to get closer to an enemy, you can still make a bonus action attack as part of the Frenzied Rage, which is part of one of the good features of it. It's not a bonus action attack when you take an attack, it's just a bonus action attack. But the downside, again, also the exhaustion. The process behind that means you more than likely are only going to ever probably Frenzied Rage once a day. Again, Rage is your whole thing as a barbarian, and the reason you're choosing to go path of the Berserker is really because of this Frenzied Rage ability, to get that bonus action attack. But one, your rages are limited. You can only do so many rages per long rest, and if you can only really do safely 1 Frenzied Rage per long rest, then that's a severe downside. And while you may say, oh, well, just don't frenzy regular rage, then why bother being a berserker? If you were to say, in turn, look at the path of the Totem Order Barbarian and go Bear Totem Barbarian, we have your resistance to all damage except psychic damage while you're raging. That just happens all the time. Whenever you rage, you have this really powerful ability. Actually, all of those abilities. Let's take a look. So, Bear Totem, resistance to all damage except psychic damage. That is whenever you rage. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to make any choices. There's no downside. Eagle. Other creatures have disadvantage on opportunity attacks against you, and you can dash as a bonus action. There's something you can do with your bonus action for free with no downside. Elk. While you're raging and aren't in heavy armor, you get an increase to your movement speed by 15 feet. Tiger is you can add 10 feet to your long jump and additional. That's not as useful. And then Wolf is your friends have advantage on attack rolls against any creature within 5 feet of you that's hostile to you. There's a ton of reasons why that would be useful. Let's look at the Storm Herald. Okay, they're going to get their aura feature that they get, where they get to deal kind of persistent damage or grant temporary hit points. Temporary hit points. C1 lets you target makes a dex saving throw or takes lightning damage, and the Desert one is they just take fire damage. But again, all of these things are things that you just get to do for free without any downside. Even the Battle Rager, which I've already done a video on why it's not that great, but you also get let's see. You can make, while you're raging and in your spiked armor, you can make a bonus action attack with a melee weapon using your armor spikes that does a d4 piercing damage plus your strength modifier. So even as a Battle Rager, which is one of the worst ones out there given the way some of the mechanics work, you still get a free bonus action attack every turn. It only does a d4 with your, plus your strength modifier as opposed to your main weapon damage, but you still get it for free with no downside. So then we go back to the Berserker, and you not only have to wait a whole turn after you've started raging to be able to use this, but then when you do so at the end, you're going to get Exhaustion. Another thing that's bad about Exhaustion is multiple levels of Exhaustion don't reset on a long rest. You only recover one level of Exhaustion on a long rest. So if you have 2 levels of Exhaustion and you take a long rest, you're still going to have 1 at the start of that day. Now, we're also kind of, I feel like at this point, only assuming you're getting levels of Exhaustion from frenzying. There are things that happen in the world and like enemies and things like that that can give you levels of Exhaustion. So if an enemy gives you a level of Exhaustion before you get into a fight with them or before you get a chance to go into a Frenzied Rage, then when you end your Frenzied Rage, you're going to be at 2 levels of Exhaustion. So you can see why there's downsides to this. So let's talk about what else you get as a Berserker Barbarian. At 6th level, you can't be charmed or frightened while you're raging. If you are charmed or frightened when you enter a rage, it's suspended for the duration. So that's good. Some people will say that this is the real reason you take Frenzied, you go as a Berserker Barbarian. Well, that's dumb. If your main ability that you're supposed to get for being this comes online at level 6, that is the 3 levels later than every other class, 5 levels later if you're a class that gets an ability at level 1. It's a powerful ability. It helps you possibly negate the idea of having to worry about wisdom saving throws, right? Or taking Resilient Wisdom as a potential option. It kind of offsets that. The downside is when you exit your rage, the effect picks back up. Maybe you'll luck out and it's only a minute, and by the time you activate your Frenzied Rage, your rage, the effect will have expired, so you come out of it not being charmed or frightened, but you get my point. 10 is Intimidating Presence. When you, let's see. 1, it uses your action to frighten someone. You're a barbarian. As an action, you could be hitting somebody twice at this point. Now you're choosing to use your action to frighten them. When you do so, choose 1 creature you can see within 30 feet. If they can see or hear you, they need to make a wisdom saving throw. So first of all, it's only on 1 creature. And what the wisdom saving throw is based off of, your charisma modifier. You're a barbarian. Chances are you're focusing on strength, dex, and con, the 3 things you need to be good at being unarmored and damage and all that stuff, and then they make your ability tied to your charisma modifier, or be frightened only until the end of your next turn. On subsequent turns, you can use your action again to extend the duration. So you do all of this thing tied to your charisma modifier as an action that lasts until the end of your next turn unless you use an action to extend it. This ends if the creature turns out of line of sight or is more than 60 feet away from you. If they succeed, they can't be affected for 24 hours. So in theory, if you use this and Frenzy, you can choose to use your action to make the creature be frightened and then use your bonus action to make one attack against them. Whereas if you didn't use this ability, which I've never encountered Berserker Barbarian that's ever used this ability, it just kind of is something that you just toss to the side because you're never going to have a great charisma modifier, so you just kind of forget it. Again, let's take a look at the Storm Herald. What do you get at 10th level? Or sorry, as the Totem Warrior, 10th level. You're going to get, for you, something pretty simple. It's just cast Commune with Nature as a ritual spell. And that's it. It's nothing too crazy, but Commune with Nature can provide you a lot of useful information. Let's look at our Storm Herald. At 10th level, whatever the resistance you gain from your Storm Soul feature is now granted to your allies. That's pretty useful. The Battle Rager, I think, again, they're going to get Dash as a bonus action while raging all the time. The Zealot gets, I think, a pretty good one down here. As a bonus action, you unleash a battle cry. Up to 10 other creatures of your choice within 60 feet get advantage on all attacks and saving throws until the end of your next turn, once per long rest. You, here as a Berserker, get to use an ability tied to your charisma that uses up your whole action, and you need to use your action again to sustain it, and if they succeed, it doesn't work. And then lastly, at 14th level, when you take damage from a creature within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to make a melee weapon attack against that creature. That one's good. I like that one. I like Retaliation a lot, but I think a Totem Warrior has one similar to that, I think. Wolf. Oh, no, I'm sorry. That was when you use your bonus action on your turn to knock a creature prone. That was it. I thought there was one that lets you do a reaction-based attack, but maybe I'm thinking of something else. So how do we fix this? Well, there's a couple of options. One, you could say that when you enter a rage, you can choose to enter a frenzy immediately, so you don't have to wait to do your frenzied rage to get the benefit of your frenzied rage until the next turn. I may have misspoken at the start. You can choose to enter a frenzied rage on the first turn, but you've already used your bonus action, so you can't use the attack. So the way I potentially would rephrase that is, upon entering a frenzied rage, you can make an extra attack or something like that. Another thing that you could possibly do is make this, there are some characters, some classes have an ability that says, when you take the attack action on your turn, you can make one additional attack, which would be a way to offset some of the downside of Frenzy, in that it lets you basically almost get like a hasted attack, if you will, an extra attack that is not tied to your bonus action, so that still allows you to use your bonus action. What are you going to be using your bonus action for? I'm not entirely sure, but it gives you the option to do so. Perhaps you're a multi-class, or you have a magic item that's tied to your bonus action. Another thing a lot of people say, too, is they will typically get a lot of, at least in my experience, people will go for Great Weapon Master. And that feat, if we go up to the top here, and we just duplicate this and open up a tab to go to Great Weapon Master, real quick, just to look at that feat, because it's one that I feel a lot of Barbarians take over time. On the turn, when you score a critical hit with a melee weapon and reduce a creature to 0 hit points, you can make one melee attack as a bonus action. So if you have Great Weapon Master and Frenzy, and you either roll crits pretty often or are constantly cleaving creatures down to 0 hit points, the fact that you are in a Frenzied Rage will mean nothing to Great Weapon Master, because you'll be making your bonus action attacks anyway. So one or the other will be canceled out. And then the other ability is you can choose to take the reduction in attack to deal extra damage. So again, that's sort of another downside to Frenzy, is if Frenzy doesn't synergize well with Great Weapon Master. Not that all Barbarians, Berserker Barbarians, are going to take that, but if the Frenzy ability was something like, whenever you take the attack action, you can make an extra attack, then that would work with Great Weapon Master, and in theory you could get 4 attacks in a turn, and possibly a reactionary-based one as well. Another thing people will say is you can use, the only way to get rid of a level of exhaustion quickly is to use Greater Restoration, a costly spell, a 5th level spell slot, as well as a costly material component. And that is not, again, a good way to deal with a level 3 ability that's kind of one of the main focuses of your class. So we could do when you enter a Frenzied Rage, you're immediately allowed to take an attack. So you don't have to, and then you can use a bonus action, take subsequent attacks on every turn. That fixed the waiting for the first turn. Or, maybe you don't go into a frenzy on the first turn, you wait till the second turn to then go into the Frenzied Rage. That's one way to do it. Again, we talked about possibly not making it a bonus action, so you still have access to your bonus action, making it and just an extra attack. Another thing that you could possibly do, and I've thought about this a lot because I'm not really sure. I mean, some people will just give you a bonus action attack. That's the benefit of being a Berserker Barbarian, is when you take the attack action on your turn while you're raging, you can make an extra attack as a bonus action with no downside. And I'm not entirely obligated to say that that's not a bad idea. It would be very powerful at 3rd level, but let's think about some other classes, all right? A monk at 3rd level can still make can make 2 bonus action attacks. Granted, it's only using unarmed strikes, but as a monk at level 2 or level 3, you can make 3 attacks. At level 5 as a monk, you can make 4 attacks every turn with expense of 1 key point. A fighter at level 5 can make 2 attacks or 4 attacks with action surge. Fighters are going to get more attacks as they level up. Certain fighter subclasses are going to allow them to take additional extra attacks and things like that mixed in there. Paladins are only ever going to get 2 attacks, but they have smites to boost on the damage, so they're more than likely going to outdamage you unless you're doing crits constantly with your brutal critical. Rogues have sneak attack, so I don't really know if there's a downside to just saying on your turn, as part of you just call it frenzy, you don't go into a frenzied rage. On your turn, when you're raging, you can make an extra melee weapon attack as a bonus action, period. Just give you a bonus action attack. That makes it powerful. If you have a throwaway ability at level 10, which we may talk about fixing in just a bit here, that's fine. So if you don't like the idea of just making it a bonus action attack, here's another thought I have. When you're raging, there's 2 options. There's one, you as a Frenzied Barbarian, whenever you want to give the ability, maybe that comes online at level 6, maybe it comes online at level 3, you can remove a level of exhaustion on a short rest. I forget which one it is, but one of the Unearthed Arcana classes gives you the ability to remove, and I can't remember if it's a Barbarian or a different one, but one of the Unearthed Arcana recently released subclasses had a thing where you could reduce a level of exhaustion on a short rest. That would fix things, right? So if you could take a short rest and get a level of exhaustion back. But then again, if you think about it, if you could just get exhaustion levels reduced on a short rest every time you took a short rest, you would just take a ton of short rests and negate the fact that there's exhaustion there anyway. So maybe that's not really the best answer, because if you can just get multiple short rests to continue to reduce your exhaustion, maybe we just remove the exhaustion entirely. The other option that I've thought of is while you are raging, you ignore the effects of exhaustion. So that has a potential to be, I think, a pretty cool ability. So as we saw here, there's a lot of downsides to exhaustion. If you have 2 levels of exhaustion, your speed's cut in half. If you have 3 levels of exhaustion, your attacks and saving throws have disadvantage. But if your ability as a Frenzied Barbarian is while you're raging, you ignore the effects of exhaustion for the purposes of the time that you're in your rage, then you can be acting pretty much as normal. When you get, I think it's Relentless Rage, where you don't drop rage early. While you're raging, it'll last longer. And then again, later on, you'll have unlimited rages once you hit level 20, so you can continue to rage through. So I kind of like the idea of if you're constantly staying in a rage, you don't have the downside of being exhausted, but potentially when your rage eventually ends, you may just drop dead because you have 6 levels of exhaustion. But for that fight, because it's a big deal with the boss, you had to go into 2 rages because it's a super long fight. And you already had that. So you're just hacking through, doing a crazy ton of damage and then it gets to the end of your rage and you just collapse and die because you had 6 levels of exhaustion, but you fought past it. I think that that would be a really cool concept. I'm not sure if that's the best way to fix it, but I like the visual that I just cooked up in my head for it. Mindless Rage, again, you can't be charmed or frightened while you're raging. I like it. I also would be fine if when you enter a rage, any charm or frightened effect on you is ended. Like, it just ends. It's not suspended until your rage ends. It's just over. I think that that's fine, but more or less Mindless Rage could stay the same as it is. Intimidating Presence, I don't like that it's an action. What you could do is make this as part of your rage. That's what I would do. When you enter a rage, you can choose to do this thing at level 10. So whenever you enter a rage, you can choose to frighten someone with your menacing presence. When entering a rage, choose one creature within 30 feet of you. If that creature can see or hear you, it must succeed on a wisdom saving throw. DC 8 plus your proficiency bonus plus maybe your constitution modifier or your strength modifier, or be frightened until the end of your next turn. And then on subsequent turns, you can use your bonus action to extend the duration of this effect if you want to. So I like the idea of it just being like, I'm entering a raid, that's scary, that triggers the effect, rather than you having to use your whole action to do so, and then make it a bonus action to continue it. Because if we do my original idea where you just get an attack as a bonus action when you enter a rage, then that makes you have to at least have some decision. Do I continue to make them be frightened of me with my bonus action, or do I forego that and let the frighten end at the end of my turn and just go for 3 attacks? And then retaliation at level 14, I leave that one alone. I like that. So anyway, guys, sorry that was a little long-winded, but I did want to make sure I talked pretty at length about what the issues were with the Frenzy Barbarian, or at least what I perceive my issues to be with the Berserker Barbarian. I keep saying Frenzy Barbarian, the Berserker Barbarian. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What are your issues with the Berserker Barbarian? Did I touch on the things that you dislike about it? Or do you think there are other issues above and beyond what I mentioned? Also, what do you think about my ideas for how to fix it? Possibly just giving you the bonus action attack without any downside, or make you ignore the level effects of exhaustion while raging. Let Intimidating Presence be a function of rage rather than something you need to use your whole action for. I don't know. I'm curious what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to the channel, now's a good time to do so and ring the notification bell. I'll see you guys at the next one.